Welcome to Policy in Wonderland. I'm your host, Evitaro Mira, and you already know you can call me Evie. In Policy in Wonderland, just like Alice, we are going to explore and see the wonderful world of insurance, insurtech, and everything that's connected to this amazing ecosystem. In Policy in Wonderland, you will meet startups from all over the world, key figures, brokers, and more. So without further ado, we travel today to the UK, and I wanted to invite my guest to join me as we go down the rabbit hole. Please welcome Pete Roberts from Data Sandwich. Hey, Pete.
Hi, Evie. Good morning to you. Thanks for having me.
Good morning as well. Great to having you here. And thank you joining me in the early hour in London right now, right?
Yeah, no, it's quite early. 8:40 in the morning.
Okay, it's not too bad. So let's start from the beginning. Could you please tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So my name is Pete Roberts, and I'm the founder of Data Sandwich, which is an early stage startup focused on innovation exclusively in the insurance sector. We've been going 3 years. My background personally is in insurance for 40 plus years, either working directly for an insurance company as a broker relationships manager. I've worked in the Tin Can, the Lloyd's building in London. And for the last 10 years, I've been selling large policy administration systems, analytics systems across Europe, Middle East, China, and India. So as a result of that, that gave me quite a lot of insight into the different cultural approaches to innovation and a lot of anecdotal information. And it didn't matter which country you're in, innovation is a challenge wherever you are.
Exactly.
Yeah, geography does not come into it.
So let's start talk about Data Sandwich. Before we dive in, Data Sandwich, where does the name come from?
Okay, so data sandwiches, a nod to the fact that we're always dealing with sandwiches of data, with be it operational data, risk data, marketing data. But on top of that, what we tend to forget is, especially in insurance, right? Because we like to be logical and control everything. And if it isn't 100% logical, we do tend to squeeze it out of the equation sometimes. So it's a nod to the human quirkiness that we are also creative thinkers. So we're capable of logical thinking, straight line thinking, but it's the capability for creative thinking that makes us different to just using a computer to help us innovate. I mean, otherwise we could just use Chat GPT, right, to innovate all our new products and services. In reality, at least for now, AI is not capable of creating something that's truly authentically new that hasn't been thought of or seen before, whereas the human mind can. It's a question of how we make that acceptable as a theory and a working practice within an insurance environment. And that's pretty much what Data Sandwich has been set up to do.
Mm-hmm. So, but now I want to understand much more about the problem. What is the problem that Data Sandwich is trying to solve? Because we know about innovation and we know about insurance and what, and we know that combine the two of that together is one big problem sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. No, for sure. See where you're coming from. So basically, depending on which data source you go to, 80% of innovation projects fail. So you can look at McKinsey 2018 or ISO 56000 data. It's a pretty consistent number. So that means for every 1 million of innovation project spend, 800K ends up getting quietly written off. That's huge, right? Okay. So we're saying 1 in 5 projects succeed or performance is 20%. Now, if you've got a child in school and they come back and you say, what did you score on your maths exam? And they say, well, it's 20%. You're not going to think that's very good, are you?
Yeah.
But
No.
but in the insurance sector, we've learned to live with it. It's definitely not a criticism. I mean, insurance companies, clearly smart companies that employ very bright people. There's a chap, Rory Sutherland, who's the chairman of Ogilvy, an advertising agency. And I like him as an example because in a way, an advertising agency is the epitome of a creative individual and a creative company. His view is if you've got a problem this 80% failure rate with projects, and it's been looked at by very logical people, probably brighter people than yourself, over a long period of time, and it's intractable, the solution is probably not going to be logic alone, which creates this kind of contradiction because most of us have been educated to some degree, whether that's university or college or the university of life, but we kind of get locked into believing that things can only be done a certain way, and we can't see outside of that pattern. And it takes an outsider to come along and, well, with an alternative point of view. Now, my point of view is definitely alternative, and let me tell you, it does it bothers some people. It puts their backs up because you can't say that. We've been doing it this way for 70 years. Forget 300 years, but just for the last 70. And you're coming along and saying that you know better. But it's not really a case of we know better. We did a study of 134 insurance companies, and as I say, I've worked across many countries and sold big systems. So you're working up and down the organizational chart from the people that are creating products to the people that are processing and underwriting it, claims, everything. You get a truly holistic view. But how does that? I've lost my thread of thought there.
Keep going. It's right now. It's pretty understand.
Yeah. So there's this. We've just been used to doing innovation in a certain way, and that certain way really is what we've done is we've taken agile project methodology and other standard project management methodologies and kind of built them out to serve the purpose for innovation. But it doesn't really do that. And the reason agile programming does not work, in our view, for innovation is because it measures what can be seen or touched. So the tangible things, people, things, time, and money. Everything else it ignores. And initially, when I make this statement,
I told you about my friend Yorai Gabriel that is he has a book about the innovation dilemma, and he says something very close to that because what is not measurable isn't managed, and he used something called mind maps. Sorry, mind maps to generate questions for us to understand why the way we're thinking and the way we need to create the innovation structure of the new product, of the new process that we want to develop in the company.
No, that's true. I haven't read that particular book, but it does tie in quite nicely with what we'll be talking about later, because to some extent our solution does use a mind map, although it's not an ordinary mind map, it's a mind map on steroids. You know, it's driven by AI. But anyway, so back to this point where we're ignoring a lot of intangible factors, and it's quite hard for people to get their heads around it initially. And the examples that seem to work the best are if you point out or say, look, creativity, how are you creative when you get to the ideation phase? So they all say, well, we do personas, and we tell people to think outside the box, and we tell them that they're free to do blue sky thinking. And this is meant to be enough guidance to put them on the path to discovering something that's never been seen before in the insurance world, and actually be truly innovative. And there's a couple of problems with that. First off, I mentioned Rory Sutherland, the chairman of Ogilvy Advertising. That guy spent 5 years at university doing creative studies, and then like 30 years working in the creative industry before he considered himself to be creative. So perhaps we're expecting a bit too much of our insurance innovation teams to expect them to understand everything about risk management, policy structure, etc., 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 and be truly creative if they've not been trained in that space. It's not to say that they can't be without the right assistance, and it's not to say that they don't have successes, because indeed they do. But if we're going to close that 80% gap of innovation projects that aren't working, we need to sort of just, well, put our pride to one side and say, yeah, can we make our lives a bit easier here? Data Sandwich has come up with a technique which we believe will do this, and we'll get onto that. But I don't want to stray too far from your question. So you're talking about innovation and looking at factors that aren't traditionally measured by agile project management, and then putting those factors into some kind of mind map. So let's just focus on that for a minute. There's two factors for you that are often overlooked or just treated in a very shallow way. When you get a group of people together, you may have one strong personality that can skew the creative process in one particular direction, and that person might not be the best at creating. They may be, they may not be. Or you may have somebody that has just happens to have read or had an interest in a particular aspect of insurance, or they've had a brainwave like, oh, why don't we do COVID cover? You know, it's like this is a new need that's sprung up. Why don't we consider this? But if they're the quiet type and introverted and shy and retiring, you don't hear what they've got to say. So there's that piece. That's a factor that's not measured at the moment. Cognitive surplus is another factor that's not measured at the moment, and that is all the amazing experience that just employees that have worked in insurance companies, whether it's for months or years, and many of them for years, they understand things that aren't in manuals. They understand needs in the marketplace that often aren't talked about when you go to sort of these big conferences or whatever. But they need to be aired. So by cognitive surplus, basically we mean free, humanized data, ideas, and experience that could be brought into the innovation process. So this is something that's not measured, but we've found a way that it can be pulled into the process. Then you have to consider something like autonomy. And bear in mind, I said there's 22 of these factors, so I'm not going to go through all 22. I'm sure you don't want, but this is just to give you an idea of how it works. Yeah. Without autonomy, the team is not free to make the decisions that they need to do pretty much in real time. Without that, they can't achieve something approaching flow state. Now, we know flow state as it applies to individuals. It's that state as sort of like when you're driving from A to B and you've forgotten you've driven that distance because it's so automatic, the whole process of driving the vehicle, and your mind's on something more interesting, but it's all working and flowing nicely. And that's one of the best times for when imagination can kick in. Various people have studied how you can achieve that in a group environment. And to be honest with you, it's a bit of a new aspect of behavioral science, but it's definitely worth aiming for. Doesn't work if you haven't given the autonomy. The next factor is in your project charter, you probably said, right, we want to have an innovation, we want it to be revenue earning, we want it to be safe from claims runs and so on, we want it to serve this socio-economic group. But you need to have a very clear goal that is constantly linked to these unseen factors, these risks. So all 22 factors need to be embedded in a single model, and it has to be a model that pretty much runs itself. Now, what I mean by that is nobody's having to record extra data. Nobody's feeling that they've got to play management whack-a-mole. You didn't hit this KPI for this factor that we don't traditionally measure. That needs to be done automatically. And we do that in three ways. First of all, we have a human in the loop, the data sandwich consultant, that kind of fills in the gaps and answers people's questions and makes the whole thing flow. They are the ringmaster. Underpinning all of that is the data sandwich patent applied for methodology, which balances all of these 22 factors in such a way that you're free to smoothly operate, but it will always keep you safe, but not too safe. And what I mean by that is it'll keep you safe in the sense that it won't let you produce what we call showcase innovation, something that is authentically new, but it's so crazy it's never going to meet anybody's need. It's not going to sell. It's not going to make the company any profit.
But if right now I need to use data sandwich during my new innovation process, do I need to understand that the 22 risks? Do I need to learn something new, or have I the ability to focus on my project? because this is what I want to do. I want to focus on my project, and you will give me the data, or you will give me the structure of the paths that I need to work in.
That's a good question. Thanks, Lee. So most of it is automated for you. It's either done via the algorithm and or guided by the data sandwich consultant. There are some things that we need to educate the team on. And when I say educate, I don't mean send them back to school. I mean, give them some comfort that the whole process is going to work by explaining it in common sense principles. So that has to be done. And there needs to be some education around human biases that can stop good work happening inside projects. And this is not a criticism, right? We all have biases. And sometimes all you need is for somebody to make you aware of what they are, and then it can be called out in the meeting, and it becomes a fun thing. It's not a criticism, but it stops a limited approach to being creative. So your creative approach now is governed by the original goal. We avoid it becoming showcase innovation. We avoid it becoming imitation innovation, where it doesn't. It's not really very different from something else the carriers already produced before. Yes, so in answer to your question, there's no real arduous learning. It's not like going back to school, but we do present part of it, yeah, as a
Where do you
workshop.
fit into the insurance ecosystem, or more particular is who are your stakeholders in the insurance company, the insurance ecosystem?
Yeah, we exclusively serve the carriers. I mean, in theory, we could serve brokers as well, but we're focused while we're starting out on the carriers because they're the ones that have the big budgets and they're writing off 80% of those budgets. So you could see a quick win there in theory, providing we can get their confidence. And yeah, for sure they've got a need. I mean, they're not just having one innovation project; they're having innovation projects across multiple lines of business. It's not always product; it can be product and service, or it can be delivered in different ways, whether that's embedded insurance and so on.
The carrier is a good customer. It's a good, is the best stakeholders that we want to deal with. But the carrier will say, you know what, I have a good people here, very smart, that they understand the problems, they understand the market. I don't need any outsider will tell me what to do and how to do that with a great AI maps and all the shebang. But and you know what? I will take a risk about those 1, 2, 3, 4 innovation projects that I have. One maybe succeed, the other will fail. Okay, I can deal with that. I'm a carrier, I have a big pocket, and yada yada yada. So how you deal with that kind of point of view?
Oh, well, that is the prize-winning question, isn't it? I mean, if I had an answer to that, I would be a multi-millionaire with this company in every country in the world. So it takes time, but we both know it takes time to change the views of carriers. It's not something that happens overnight. You have to be patient. You have to be empathetic and explain, look, we know we're asking you to believe quite a lot here. If you've got used to doing something one way for 70 years, and we come along and say, well, look, you've got an 80% potential improvement you can make here just by making a few simple tweaks. And this ties into your previous question, which I should have answered a bit more fully. Where we fit in the ecosystem is we're the provider of a strategic but pivotal solution. So we provide the basis from which an innovation project can be safe. It's almost like in a hard shell, can't be damaged. You can drop it, you can punch it. It's not going to produce anything it shouldn't do. It's going to produce you a good innovation. And the word strategic is important because that leaves it open to have other more specialist companies plug themselves into it. I think you had a podcast recently with Cake and Arrow that were sort of very specialist in the insurance space,
Mm-hmm.
the XP and systems around that. That's what I call a tactical solution. So we're strategic. All of these tactical solutions can be plugged in if they needed to. Going back to the more recent question where you were saying, well, why would carriers accept this as an idea? I think it's the conversations are getting more energized. That's the best way I can put it. So 3 years ago when I started this, it was people were talking to me out of curiosity, just in case I had a magic pill or something that I could give them that was going to change everything. And I tell them what we're doing, and they'd say, "Well, no, we're already doing that, Pete. Thanks anyway." And I'm thinking, "Well, are you? Because if your success rate is 20%, how do you? But if everybody's at 20%, everybody's walking at the same speed, so that's fine." It's more of a case now where if you can see something, you can't unsee it.
Mm.
And it's pretty obvious, isn't it, that you shouldn't really be
Yes.
writing off 800K in every million. That goes without saying. But it's not even just about monetary matters. It's about employee satisfaction. It's about consumers getting products that they need that aren't reaching the light of day simply because the innovation project process is very inefficient. And after a while, I mean, we've probably heard of this term innovation fatigue. Well, that's an official term that's been applied to those people that have been unfortunate enough to be involved in multiple innovation projects that just have, I don't like using the term failed, but failed to satisfy, let's put it that way. So they've either overshot and produced these crazy new things that nobody wants, or created something that looks remarkably like the twin of an existing product. So they need to bother innovating it. It's just incremental innovation.
So,
Or
so
sometimes,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
or sometimes it's a bunch of people out. If you're the innovation team, say 20 to 50 people, that's actually a big ask to ask that a number of people to come up with something authentically new that nobody else has ever thought of before in the whole of the insurance uh, ecosystem
And we
and the
meant to
history.
be creativity during this process.
Yeah, it's a big ask, right? So if we can point people just a few degrees in the right direction, we see that as progress. And coming from an insurance background and having an understanding of systems, having solved them, we think we're on a good track here. And it's been designed specifically with insurance in mind. Insurance is risk averse, right? So this does not interfere with existing methodologies, processes, or practices. It sits there as an overlay. It doesn't require integration, which is complicated and expensive, into your old legacy systems or analytic systems, whatever. It's freestanding. It's not laden with loads of features you don't need just to get to the ones you want. This has been designed fit for purpose to help people in teams come up with more creative ideas than they could before, like 100x it.
So in a way, you are de-risking innovation projects. You
In a way,
de-risking the process.
yes, de-risk 100%. That is the first priority of Data Sandwich, to de-risk the innovation project
Okay.
process. And then you get the comeback sometimes if you the, oh yeah, it's just another process, and the big consultancies will say, well, if you've got a process, we've got a process. Well, that's like saying Coca-Cola is just another fizzy recipe. You know, this is a unique approach that's been built on field research. So, do you want me to tell you a little bit about that? I won't go all scientific on you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, because it's not scientific actually, the truth of it. So having had the privilege to work in all these places and meet all these different insurance grassroots to sea level, you can get pretty honest answers about what do you think happened with that project. And I've collected all that data. It's all anecdotal. It's not numbers, anecdotal. And we use a technique called Louvain analysis, which is kind of like a precursor to ChatGPT. Before before any of us ever heard of ChatGPT, it's a type of AI. And what that does is, it's kind of a large language model, analyzes what's been spoken about, what causes were attributed to these projects failing, and then creates relationships between the different islands of different clusters of information. So in a way, what we've done there is, instead of measuring information that we cannot see, we've surfaced information so that it can be seen, which is a little bit more comforting for insurers. And that, it's worth mentioning as well that even in the world of business gurus, right, there's contradictions. As you think about Peter Drucker, if it cannot be measured, it cannot be monitored. Sorry, if it cannot be measured, it cannot be managed. Well, that's kind of the attitude that carriers have taken with innovation projects. But then you've got Demi, another guru, who's saying the most important information to measure is the information that you cannot see. Right. So we're trying to steer a middle line in an environment that values logic above all things. Logic is king, always will be. But we're just trying to just open the door a little bit. Say, well, look, you can stick to your logic. We're not going to cause any massive implosion or a claims run, which is a fair defense on the part of carriers when it comes to, well, why are you so cautious when it comes to innovation? Look, if you're innovating a new television, the worst that can happen is people won't like it and they won't buy it. But if you innovate a new insurance product / service, then the worst thing that can happen is you can have a run on your book and you've lost money. That's a whole different story. So it's kind of, there's good logic behind this cautiousness, but we're just trying to provide enough of a safety net. We're not saying it's perfect, but even a safety net where there wasn't one before, even if it's got a few holes in it, you've made huge steps forward, and it gives you a better chance.
And you have a huge takeaways if, God forbid, something fall down on this safety net, and you understand much better for your next project for what to do or not to do, because you have right now a measurable process.
Yeah, 100%. That's so true. And it does take time to build these things up.
Yeah.
When you look at the numbers, it's a little bit frightening. There's every project we think is different. That's not because we're trying to sell you a new solution for every project, but they are. You've got different people, different objectives, different sets of conditions, and they have to be treated for the unique things that they are. But this is where it gets a bit scary. It's interesting though, and as insurers that are good with numbers, notoriously good with numbers, we should be able to handle it. If you take 22 factors, and 22 is nominal. We wanted to separate the factors so everybody could see what they were, but not split them up. There's too many to manage and understand. Originally, we started at 24. We've got it down to 22. But here's the point. Any one of those factors can derail a project, but you won't necessarily see it derailing the project because it's an unmeasured factor, right? It's invisible. So in the past, when projects have stalled, I think it was somewhere between 7 and 8 times out of 10, it'd be the IT department that was blamed for the project stalling because they didn't have the resources, whether for distribution or for prototyping of the product or whatever. And poor old IT were getting blamed with this, where in reality it was because the ideas that had been created weren't complete, or there wasn't a concrete goal that was backward linked to socio-economic need for the product in the first place, and all these kind of things. So 22 factors, yeah, any one of them can derail your projects, but those 22 factors can come together in like lottery style numbers. I mean, it's a factorial equation, so 1 million plus different ways. And some are more frequently occurring than others, obviously. So it's not really surprising that innovation projects have been taking this hit. When you think about it, it's like being a pilot flying blind on low fuel because you just flying literally in the dark, because they well, we're not going to measure those factors because traditionally we haven't bothered measuring them. And also, we're not going to treat them seriously or they're important because they don't fall into our general understanding of what logical is. Creative is woolly, logical is good. And it takes both. And in our methodology, we don't have this clunky relationship between logic, straight line thinking, creative thinking. By saying, right, now we've been logical, now we've been creative, now we've been
Mm-hmm.
logical, now we've been creative. It's a seamless process. We call it synthesis. Both of those things are happening simultaneously in our process. So
Can you
you're
give
allowed
us an,
to,
can you give us an example of how this might work with the project in reality?
yeah, I'll give you, I'll, this is quite a recent example. I'll give you this example. It's got a bit of a sting in the tail, but it'll serve our purposes. So we've got a bunch of insurance companies and they wanted to just come up with something completely new to insure. They realized before that they were innovating, but not innovating with purpose. By that, I mean, were they looking at socio-economic trends? Just to give one example, it might be the disintegration of the nuclear family. You don't need joint life so much. You need specialist single life. It might be the gig economy. You don't want policies that run for years. You want them that run for minutes and hours and so on and so forth. But it wasn't backward linked to a new socio-economic trend that they'd spotted. Now they could have gone for electric vehicles. What they did was they went for COVID cover. This was interesting because it was out. The information was collected from outside of the core team, not just the core team. So the core innovation team were completely in control. They weren't relinquishing their authority over the project or its directional general management, but they were asking the wider employee community, existing customers, industry analysts, what do you think we should be insuring now? What would be a good market segment? What's underserved? How can we help? Anyway, it became the COVID cover. And this was all going very well. And with our process, we keep the project safe, right? There's no chance that you can forget to go back and do the compliance check, go
Mhm.
back and do the math sanity check, just because the need for those checks has arisen somewhere else in the process, which it does. It bounces around, right? It doesn't. It's not always considerate of your project plan.
Mhm.
Oh, in this particular instance, the COVID cover, everybody was very pleased with it. It was going to be very efficient because it was embedded insurance. It could be via lots of different partners. The problem was they didn't do the full de-risking. They didn't go back and do a second math sanity test. We just will not let anything out the door without doing that. And the end result was when it went to market, consumers were actually being offered kits from disreputable people of syringes that could make them infected with COVID. So they were buying these kits. So the people selling the kits were making a lot of money, thank you very much. But then there was a run on the insurance company in terms of COVID claims. So how
Okay.
about that? So that's just really one example. But remember, I said there's like over a million different ways your projects can go wrong. That's just one. So we try and provide that safety net. So you have the confidence that, yeah, you can be as creative as you like because we won't let you stray over that barrier, that boundary that will cause you to fall.
So, as we close to the end, is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap up? Or, you know what? What would you like people to take away about data sandwich?
Uh, I'd like them to take away that it's a simple idea with a powerful effect. And just ask them to look at things slightly differently through our eyes temporarily. Now, if we don't satisfy them that this isn't based in science, that it isn't based in common sense, Now, I'd understand them running in a different direction, saying we're already doing that. But hopefully, after they've actually met the people that deliver it, they'll see A, it makes their project rock solid and safe, which creates the right environment for them to be creative. And instead of leaving them with that terribly hard task of unassistedly trying to come up with something authentically new that hasn't been seen before, we help assist their human smarts with AI. So it's the perfect package for innovation. And hopefully they'll save 800K in every million eventually.
Eventually, hopefully. And I didn't ask you that, but where you operating? You operate only in the UK, or you can operate in the US, for example, or other English language country?
I'm based in the UK in the heart of London. I operate across Europe, Middle East.
Okay.
When we get going again, we'll move out to China and India, and
Yeah.
we're talking to people in the States at the moment. But yeah, because it's a very much a portable idea. I mean, it's even an idea that's portable across sectors. But because my roots are in insurance,
Exactly.
uh, um, that's how this has come about.
Pete, I want to thank you very much for this episode. It was very great to hear about your idea and the product. And I will say on this notes, on the episode notes, I will add all the LinkedIn profile and your email if it's okay, so people could reach you.
Evie, thank you very much for having me, and keep up your own good work.
Thank you very much. Thank you, my friend. Bye bye.
All the best. Bye bye. Bye.